And I'm going to start by going rogue because Ray, I realize we have an area of overlap, New Orleans. So I did live in New Orleans for 7 years, so I wasn't going to read this, but I'm going to read this for Ray. This was written post-Katrina in New Orleans. The poem is called The Flood, The Burning. On top of the mountain of moldy carpet he has yanked from his home, my neighbor makes up his own verses of Michael Row the Boat Ashore. Plucking a banjo, a dry find in a load of junk. What else can you do when the neighborhood is wrecked and we're still trying to live there? I open my car window to escape the lemon smell that masks an underscent of wet dog, remnants of the last hurricane. As I hunt a place to park between the piles of garbage, I am reminded of the game we played as kids. If you could only take 10 things from a burning house, what would you say? Yesterday, you called to tell me that your car was lost. Water to the dashboard, also claiming books. You were too tired to unload since moving out days before. Your voice flutters when you say you found my picture in a favorite book you had rescued. It's a sign. My face tucked into a poem called Save the Boat. I stopped to count the bodies up and down the street, filing in and out of their houses like work ants trying to salvage the hive. When a cat springs out from behind the shed, I scream. But I am also that animal, a wild creature now, seeking refuge in uninvited spaces and stealing hope from your journal, words you never spoke. What I didn't tell you when you called, couldn't, is that I'm done scavenging for love. Listening to your confession, I was ashamed at how little I missed of what was gone. Our old house, my home, is empty, but intact. The love I had for you, a charred frame where a portrait once hung. The first poem I want to read, The Entropy of Rocket Man it follows the 4 elements, and the definition is parallax. The apparent displacement of an observed object due to the change in the position of the observer. Parallax, 1972. I stared at the sun without blinking, believing my brother's claim that it emitted vitamins that would strengthen my sight. I strained until my eyes burned, tearing, then closing. But even under the moist lids, the roiling fireball blazed on, as if singed into my retina. On my back, in the back of the paneled station wagon, I was the nebula between my older brother's more solid bodies. They didn't need me, and they couldn't shake me. Our feet floating over our heads as we simulated spaceflight. We would hang upside down from tree limbs to practice weightlessness and crash land into the pool with our coats on. I followed them in the same way that the moon trailed our car on trips, as if it were a balloon tied to the tailpipe. When the second brother protested, "Girls aren't allowed on the moon," the older one conceded, "We'll just make her carry all the stuff." People often ask, where do ideas come from? And I'm not even going to attempt to answer that. We'd be here all day. But one reason for me is poems come to me through dreams. And this next poem is literally from a dream. And it is called Caravaggio Paints the Football Stadium, a Skyscraper, and a Storm. In the mind of this dreamer, the only window is closed and seems always to have been so. Section 1, the stadium. In the backfield, a human tank waits for the snap, But from here, he's all tortured grimace, a dark smudge for eyes. The turn of last century was at hand. His family engulfed by a complex ensemble, already a thing of the past. Sounds bounce from miniature speakers over bleachers of hot dogs and chocolate, but to keep an emphasis on the essential, the beautiful boy is the show. And here, before love has found him, he can allow himself to slake his thirst, and he desires to surpass himself. The spectators, alive only in their hopes for him, hold their painted breaths and hang on the edge, frozen in the stands like a backdrop of rotten fruit and fake leaves juxtaposed with fresh. Section 2, the skyscraper and the storm. From a top floor of glass walls, the geometry of downtown and heaven itself are the backdrop, au courant, to three figures cast in silhouette. They huddle as a storm erupts from black clouds. They too were a city in the throes of transformation. We should get to solid ground, he shouts, or at least get out of the window, she mumbles as father, mother, and son empty the tower. But each pursues a separate path to safety. Was the family tired of a common life and life in common? Or is theirs the kind of mystical crisis a painter cannot capture? Running free now in the street, they don't see the lightning bolt that comes for them. It splits the sky to end the chiaroscuro forever. The rogue blaze that follows them, showing us, the onlookers, that there's no escaping destiny. Foremost in the portrait stands a provocative angel who strokes the lamb that will replace the child. Okay, in addition to dreams, another sort of portal for poems for me is art itself. So I guess a poem, art in response to other art, like for example, sometimes when I hear music, I immediately see pictures, or I feel a story. And I can't help it. It's just kind of an automatic response. And the same is true for paintings. I do have a series of poems that were inspired by paintings, like the Caravaggio, but all of the ones in this collection are imaginary. They are things these painters never painted, but what I think they might have painted had they been alive today. All right, so the next two are going to be from that series. Has anybody read My Name is Asher Lev? Okay, so this book is about that. That's a novel about a fictional painter. On wanting to see Asher Lev's trees. Part 1, Asher Lev. Freedom starts with an exercise in perspective and shadow. In a borrowed studio, you learn not to look away, studying first the body, then its branches. From trees, it's not much of a stretch to crosses. Your thoughts follow your brush into the hollows, learning by error how a bluish hue makes a flower fragile and a face gaunt, until you are the obsession that explodes the ceiling in your teacher's loft, your roots tearing out the sewer pipes. Until hunger isn't easy like it used to be. This one is never sated. Like an increasing stream of gas that feeds a flame, the appetite flares. It is torture, peeling back the layers, madness in hunting the truth into a corner until, veering away from a collision, you wheel into the disaster you were meant to find. You saved your parents by martyring them. Section 2, this is now about the author, Shea. Quote, Asher's paintings converted onlookers, unquote. They do not exist. But how I have imagined his sorrowful trees as you describe. How I would like to stumble into a gallery and reaching past the red velvet that ropes me out, feel the flesh of his oils on canvas. Like the bleeding woman in the Bible, I am sure I would be healed. But Asher isn't real. He's only a symbol of the writer's betrayal. Yours is the pain that radiates from his eyes, the pain you say he paints. I am not that interested in you. The monster created appeals to me more than its maker. I have met many artists I had admired until I met them. How disappointing they stood in contrast to their work. The imagined a force of its own, like plants that had outgrown clay pots. The last one about the painters I'd like to read is also another imagined thing. It's called Vermeer's Pomegranate. And it is an ars poetica for the uninitiated. That's basically a poem about poetry or about the process of creating. Vermeer's Pomegranate. The most beautiful nights should be lived, not painted, or painted through living, as if electric moments were a book of moving portraits. Last night, the moon could have made me forget my name. Amazing how long I had refused its impact, and yet time always slows when we're in between memories. The combination of the abstract theme of dishes, the everyday realism of sandwich making, and the way the moon's gray light caught me pathetically clutching my chest, looking skywards, is grotesque. But I abandoned work anyways and went out to join the breeze, a last call of birds. Again, that which is extraordinary should be captured in your pale lemon arms, not in oils with a brush or by words on a page. But I have not painted in as long as I have not embraced you, because art starts in desire, and desire has left the building. But last night, since selection is part of art's process, I took a walk to find you, and I did. Last night, the green moon was you. I am making a discrete point here. I moved into the blue fog of past until you held my hand as we talked of summer. I stopped to make out the heavy fruit which bent a vine over the fence when you plucked the largest and gave it to me. Shoulders brushing as we kissed, nighttime like a lost love letter. But I should not have breathed it in. This dark street littered with pages from an old calendar. It is wrong to suggest that these props, although allegorical, are mere symbols that support my own meaning. That I chose to return to a time long out of date, for the maps taped to the trees and windshields of parked cars showed not the region that existed, but the provinces as they were before truce was declared and the treaty signed. It reveals that as a work of art, love is a failure. But last night, the moon, verboten, was a fragrance that makes fools of lovers whose oaths open the dikes to flood the land, leading nearby countries to war. And who can sleep when the wound of love is an overripe orange, swollen in the sky, barely hanging on? I have the last three poems are all really about the theme of the book. The word entropy itself means a lack of order or predictability, a gradual decline into disorder. In essence, it's chaos theory, that the natural way of things is chaos, that things fall apart or fall away. And the first in these last three is called divorce. From the dark water, swarming with fins, a boatload of the slowest fish is scooped into the transport, eyes gaping, mouths stretched for oxygen. Gills work the air like frantic vents, opening and closing, bodies thrashing in self-defense, counterattack, discomfort, denial. However, this is not a drill, but the fire. And here's the catch. If they stay in the crowded tank, everyone dies. But the alternative is painful, and a swifter end more likely. When moving fish from hatcheries into the aquariums, rivers, and streams, where they will spend uncertain futures, a saline solution is added to the water, throwing the fish into a fight for their lives. A state of strangulation and paralysis short of fins up. Face the facts. Fish prefer darkness, climbing each other and clustering to avoid death. Hiding is a way of life, so there will never be a good time. Change is neither welcomed nor bloodless, even when it is rescued. Still, it must be easier for bass. Airborne and in transit, they may miss regular meals, but not one searches for meaning. Only water, clean enough to survive. This is the title poem, The Entropy of Rocket Man. Pluck a feather from a crow at the window, growing blacker in the rain. Or lean in and pull a page from my book. This is not your best hour or your last. Write it out. Uninvited sorrow lands on every fence in time, but jettisoned as you are in the churning centrifuge, you cannot see beyond the madness of the hub. All you know has been taken from you and continues to fall off, like spent metal from the vessel's burnt-out core, because you cannot control your speed or which parts will unravel when. Then what seems vital splits. If only this were not your only transport. All you hold is this moment, but you don't want it. The one thing you'd like to shed. Rocket Man, you could not stay in space if you wanted to. But when the spinning stops and dreams return, picture the pepper seeds rooted, the rose of Sharon awaiting your return. The one careful hands have helped to join the earth, branching into cloud. And for the heavens that surround you's sake, discard the map you misread and others' judgment. Recall instead what wouldn't be here without your vision, which exceeds their grasp. There is more to you than fire and sky. Remember, too, the divine pull of love's gravity, and that you are part starfish. I want to thank Malverns and thank you, Ray, and thank you all for coming out on Saturday. And this is my final poem, and it is a love poem. It is called Imprinting. Conditioned to want this place, these vile city trees with roots like exposed nerve desperate for cover, I circle an old haunt as if I were a horse pinned to a carousel. My pulse races at the corner store, but I drive slower to savor the moment. A decade later, the neighborhood is worse, but the wet sidewalk still reflects a neon welcome. I have no desire to alarm someone by idling this way at night, but I can't pull away. Not yet. Your house is dark, so I open the car window, hoping for a familiar smell, like a junkie, hungry for anything that shoots me down into the past. But although the same carved tire holds weeds in the yard, the family I imagine inside has been gone for years. The dog doesn't bark from the basement that reeked of her confinement, and even if the worn carpet. You don't dream in the room at the top. I can no longer lie beside you in the dark, touching the hollow of your neck, where breath lifts and lowers the skin. Stirred by my presence, you will not turn to return my caress. My desire won't awaken a body that has moved on in time, where I am leashed. But I am forced out of idle when the new owner flashes the porch light and hollers that she has already called the police. Lovers have moved over my body to leave impressions, but their kisses are sand. The memory of your touch washes away. Thank you.